Hello and welcome to another episode of Persyou The Talks, brought to you by Persyou, a bespoke leadership coaching and development company, and supported by Fabricia, the Federation of British International Schools in Asia. My name is McKie, Associate Professor, Certified Professional Coach and Director of Persyou, and I'll be your host in this fourth series of conversations, exploring high performance in education. We'll bring you cutting-edge stories from across the global education sector, delving into the minds of recognised education and industry experts to find out about the challenges and the main issues they are facing, and to gain some further insights into what is meant by high performance. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Irfan Latif, the Principal of DLD College London, recently named Boarding School of the Year 2020, and part of the Alpha Plus group of schools. Irfan has been the chairman of the UK State Boarding Schools Forum, the vice chair of the Boarding Schools Association, and is currently its London chair. He also sits on the executive committee of the Boarding Schools Association as the inclusion and diversity representative. Irfan lectures at the Royal Institution of Great Britain, is a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, and a fellow of the Royal Society of Chemistry. Irfan, thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy day in London to join me.
Thank you very much, Nick, for having me.
So, first of all, massive congratulations, Boarding School of the Year 2020. And didn't you get another mention as well from the Independent Schools group or something?
That's correct. We also won the Special Judges Award for Independent School of the Year for our urban boarding philosophy and our work on well-being as well, ensuring that our staff and our students are performing to the best of their ability.
That's fantastic. So obviously this series is about high performance. So let's just delve straight in, Irfan. You've won these awards. How do you do it?
With a lot of support. It's not just one person. It's a team effort. And as you talk about, Nick, about high performance, it's about developing a high performing team, giving them the opportunity to be the best they can be. And my job, I suppose, is to remove those barriers. So that their mental health is in good shape, as well as their learning, not just from a student perspective, but from a teaching perspective as well. I want my teachers to continue that love of learning, whether it be about their subject, whether it be outside of their comfort zone, whether it be about managerial skills, whether it be about coaching skills, leadership. For me, it's all about creating that team so that they can go on to perform at a much higher level. And it is all about coaching, as I know you are a great exponent of the coaching model. And we feel that by giving our students the ability to be coached by our staff and our staff to have those coaching skills does lead to high-performing teams well within our school environment. So whether they be in academic departments, whether they be in pastoral teams or the house system, or then overall as a school, I think coaching has come a long way from when I was a kid.
That's great. You mentioned a couple of things there, Irfan. First of all, about well-being, and then the mental health of your teachers. So just take us through, what do you do in terms of well-being at your school, and how do you look after the mental health of your teachers, especially recently? I mean, it's been a very difficult time for in education generally, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been really, really difficult, and I think it's being there for them. It's being there. It's listening to them, listening to their concerns. What I can do in order to support them. It's ensuring that they have the tools to be able to deal with those sort of things. And how have we done this? Well, some 60 members of staff now are mental health first aid trained. So not only are they able to support the students, but they're able to support each other as well. And so they have been given tools to be able to develop their own resilience. And as a result, that will help them develop their character at the same time. And this can be passed on to their students as well as part of their little coaching teams. So that works, as we said, in the house system, whether it be in tutor groups, and it just allows them to be able to take risks. I think the most important thing about having a high performance team is to be able to take risks and not be castigated if it goes wrong. I think the fear is there that if you do make mistakes, this can cost you your job, etc., etc., etc. And I think if we allow our students and our staff to take risks, then that emboldens them to take on decisions which they then feel empowered to do the right thing. And at the end of the day, what do we hope our staff and our students to do? Put in a situation, we hope they'll do the right thing. And by giving them the tools in order to do that, whether it be through coaching, mentoring, giving them opportunities, whether that be from leadership and management, both from the student side and the staff side, I think that's the way forward.
And you mentioned there about taking risks. So can you give us an example? What risks do you want people to take, Irfan?
I think it's not, running to me every few minutes asking me to, is this okay? Can I do this? I want to give staff and my teams the autonomy to go and do that. So whether it be making a decision on a call to a parent, whether it be about a curriculum decision, whether it be about a pastoral decision, I want my staff to be making those decisions. And we've had to do that, especially as we moved online in terms of COVID. I had to rely on and trust. There's an important word there, trust. My staff to be doing the right thing by themselves, for each other and for the students while we were online. I couldn't monitor everybody online, wherever they were, all around the world. It was important that they were given the autonomy and that I and my senior leaders trusted them to get on with the work and to support my students from a pastoral aspect and from an academic aspect as well. And then for my well-being team and my line managers and heads of department and heads of faculty to provide support to their teams as well online. And that has really shown us what we can do and the power that online learning and online pastoral care can have.
I was going to ask you actually, so in terms of the changes that COVID has brought for your school, what things are you going to potentially adapt or change going forward?
I think now our staff have become more adept at using tech. When I joined in January 2018, I'm quite a tech fiend and I like all my tech. So we embarked on a program of teaching our staff all about tech. So we introduced our platform, which is Canvas, and that's our virtual learning environment. And over 2 years, we got our staff to develop courses and to understand how Canvas worked, link that in with software such as Teams. And so they did all their training for Canvas since January 2018. And they also did their Microsoft certificates as well. So we really taught them about digital literacy. And then March 2020, this happened. So my staff felt empowered. They felt confident that they could go and use this technology. And if they did make a mistake, so be it. At least they knew how to, solve the problem with the help of various colleagues here in school who could firefight those issues. And we did some parental surveys and staff surveys and student surveys, and the responses were really, really positive. 98% of parents were really impressed with what we had done in terms of online learning and the support that we provided their children. 94% of the staff were really happy with the support that they'd been given and the training that they'd been given to be able to deliver online lessons. And 88% of our students were really, really impressed. I think the other 12% just wanted to be on Xbox. But, they were really impressed with the quality of teaching and learning that continued. But Nick, don't get me wrong, there's nothing that compares to proper face-to-face online teaching, engaging with your students, engaging with your teachers. That is what we want to go back to. And we're trying to do that as best as we can through the online platforms that we use. And of course, we all came back to school in August and made sure that we were COVID safe and COVID secure so that we could welcome back our students with open arms, socially distanced, of course, so that we could come back to some sort of normality, because those students were in lockdown for some 6 months. And we wanted to engender a sense of normality as soon as we came back, making sure that we were COVID safe and COVID secure. And I hope we've done that.
And in terms of changes, Irfan, what changes did you see in regards to the students generally when they came back? was there a sense of oh, we're back, this is great, or was there a sense of actually we've got to try and get our heads back into this because we've had quite a long time at home, for example?
I think more of the first. I think they were glad to be back. I think they were glad to see and interact with other humans, which they couldn't have done. They were glad to see their teachers, and it was, the first assembly that we had, and we had to do it socially distanced. We had to have half of them on Teams, half of them in school hall, all socially distanced, and it was just great. Me personally, it was great to be back and to be interacting with the staff and to be interacting with the students. And you could, the energy was palpable back at school when we got back, even though, we had to put in all the restrictions with regard to social distancing and hand washing and hand sanitizer and perspex screens. And, although we've been spending the last 2.5 years trying to remove barriers, we've now had to put up physical barriers. There's physical barriers of perspex, the physical barriers of wearing a mask, for example. But I think we have taught our students and our staff to be quite resilient. And so they've now taken that in their stride. And now that we've moved into sort of tier 2 in London, our students and staff have just taken that on board and have adapted. And it shows great agility on their behalf and how they've developed in terms of character in order to cope with such a difficult situation.
Have you found that the students are adapting better to things than the staff?
Children are quite robust, and they have that very fearless persona about themselves. And I think, they have coped better, but, hats off to my staff. They've been itching to get back. They want to be teaching. This is what they do, Nick. Teaching is all about relationships.
Yeah.
Teaching is all about fostering those really strong relationships and building those rapport and having that interaction in the classroom. And, we all feed off that and we enjoy that. And I think staff are relishing being back and enjoying. But yes, we have to adhere to the COVID regulations, and we're trying our best in order to ensure that we provide as normal experience to our students as possible. And that is quite difficult, being right in the centre of London, right opposite St Thomas's, having our boarders all in the same building. We're the only on-site boarding school in London. And so our students, they work, they play, they eat, everything is done here. And so it's ensuring that, we can keep it as normal for them as possible.
I mean, there's a lot to think about, isn't there, in all this piece, Irfan? So in terms of the challenges for you as a school principal, what have been the main challenges for you during this period of time?
It was making sure that our IT infrastructure was in place. And I'm thankful to our IT support team who worked tirelessly over the summer and over lockdown to ensure that our systems were robust and could deal with, the Great Wall of China, the Great Firewall of China, and those sort of things, so that our students could engage in online learning and online teaching with our staff. It was the pastoral care. I think that was the most difficult. People are being isolated. People are being isolated, and how do I reach out to them? Online is fine, but there's no replacement for face-to-face, as I said. But I think that was the biggest challenge. And for us, reaching out and asking how people were and what can we do for them and how can we assist them? What else do they need from us in order to be able to do their job, or in order to, how are they coping? How are they coping with lockdown? Some of the teachers were isolating on their own, because, family were away, etc. So it was important that we engaged with those staff and we continued to meet with staff every Monday on Teams, catching up with them. We created our own pub, the Crown and Corona, and we had pub quizzes every week. So we all got together after school and met online, and that really, really helped alleviate some of the anxieties that our staff may have had during the pandemic.
It's always a balancing act, isn't it? So, for example, I was working with a group of head teachers in London, North London actually, And, some of them had quite enjoyed the whole tech side, as you said, and people had come out of the woodwork who they never thought would be leaders in this. And they're just doing all these fantastic things on Google, fantastic things on, on interactive stuff. And it's been brilliant. And the people that they thought would usually generally respond really well to change haven't. And it's that interesting space, isn't it? And the other thing that they were talking about, Irfan, was just the amount of time it takes to keep staff safe and to keep the well-being of staff going. And I suppose that's always the question, is time. So how do you craft that time to speak to staff, to keep them in some decent well-being, I suppose, and to make sure that you're protecting them so they can do their job?
One of the first things that we said was no emails after 7:00 p.m.
Okay.
GMT. We and BST. We didn't want them interacting. We just wanted them to spend time with their families.
Yeah.
Wanted them to carry on with their work so that they were, fresh the following day. And we also, being a boarding school, we're quite unique here. No emails over the weekends.
Okay.
So if there were any issues, yes, talk to the senior leadership team. We'll deal with them. But with, personal tutors and coaches and academic staff and all that thing, we just said, no emails over the weekend. If it's a real emergency, we'll pick up the phone and call you. Thankfully, we haven't had to do that. And so that was one of the things that we did in terms of ensuring that colleagues weren't online all the time, so that they could, and this was before the pandemic, because people are always on their phones, on social media and this, that, and the other. And what they do in their private time is entirely up to them. But we said we're not going to encroach on that time because we wanted them to be spending it doing things that they liked doing, whether that be spending time with their family, whether that be pursuing their hobbies and things like that. And of course, at weekends, it was for them to do what they had needed to do, whether it be, save all their work to mark at the weekend or plan and prepare at the weekend. But what we didn't want to do was to disturb them, or for them to constantly be thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get an email from the principal about this, that, and the other. Yes, we've had to send out 1 or 2 emails out of those times because of COVID, so that staff were prepared and understood what we were doing. But we've hopefully planned them in such a way so that we're not encroaching on them and that we're trying to preserve the well-being of our staff.
And you mentioned coaching quite a few times, Irfan.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to know what that looks like on the ground in your school.
Yeah, one of the college's development plans is developing a coaching culture here. And my senior vice principal, Tom Hadcroft, is a coach. And so we've been working very closely with the Graydon coaching company, Kerry McKenzie, who's been absolutely brilliant. And we have some 20-odd staff now who have who can be coaches and are on that journey now to develop their coaching skills. It's part of our development plan because that's where we want to be as a school, looking at coaching and how we can unlock potential. And it's not asking why all the time, it's asking how. How can we go about doing this and empowering people to do that? So what does it look like on the ground now? So, we're looking at personal tutors becoming coaches, and it's our coaches now coaching our students and giving them the opportunity to be able to, make those mistakes and ask questions on how, and for them to be making those decisions on their own, rather than me having to spoon feed them all the time. And by doing that, we feel that they will become more independent. We have seen a huge decrease in pastoral issues, which is good. So, those are one of the things that we've been looking at, how our pastoral systems through coaching have developed. And we've also seen an increase in how our students are taking more ownership of their learning. And I think that's coming through the coaching aspect. It's still early days, but the signs are looking good.
I was just getting a book off my shelf when you were talking there, Irfan, because it reminded me of something, lots of things that I'm engaged with at the moment with coaching, and this idea of a transformational coaching approach and sort of moving past models. In education, and in my experience, there's lots of models for coaching. The Grow model, all these coaching models that I use all the time in teaching. But a lot of the feedback that I get when I'm, especially with senior leaders, actually when I'm working with senior leaders, is the lack of opportunity potentially for professional development for senior leaders. And this idea of this new generation of coaching, not framed around the spectrum of coaching and mentoring, and you have to be at one sphere or the other sphere, but about dialogue. and the transformational impact that dialogue can have. And that necessitates the person who is the coach to potentially put some of themselves into it. So not to be purely non-directive in a coaching sense. And it sounds like if with all that risk that people are taking at your school and the well-being, developing, that you've got that really rich dialogue going on, not just at your senior level, but all the way through the school as well.
I think it's about being open and transparent. And we can make mistakes. And if I do make the mistake, the principal makes a mistake, I'll put my hand up and I'll say, look, I'm really sorry. I've made a mistake here. How can we fix it?
What was the last mistake you made, Irfan?
Coming on the podcast? No.
that was too quick. You'll never get this time back, Irfan, all right?
I know.
Enjoy it.
I don't know. What was the last mistake I made? I don't know. Maybe I didn't send an email out, at the right time, and there was a miscommunication as a result, and so then we had to deal with that and ameliorate that. So yeah, and these things happen. There's so many things going on at the moment. There's so many plates spinning. It's inevitable. One or two things are going to drop, and we're all human. And if we recognise that we are human, that we're all not superheroes, then people understand that and they accept that, and then they work with you to ensure that we can make it a better place. And I think I don't like a blame culture, and I think by removing the blame culture from institutions, we then have an opportunity where being open and transparent and showing that you are vulnerable allows people to see, yes, how can we support now to make the improvements that are required. So I've never subscribed to a blame culture. It's unhealthy. It's toxic. It's not great. But yeah, at the same time, people do need to be held accountable, and that's important. But accountable in a professional way, and it's that dialogue that you talk about, Nick. It's that dialogue which allows us to preempt and possibly pick up right at the beginning before an issue snowballs into a huge problem, which then leads to all sorts of other issues. So it's looking at ways in which we can preempt some of those car crashes from happening.
So you mentioned about that no blame culture. So what are your non-negotiables? Teaching and learning has got to be that's what we pay our staff for. We pay our staff to deliver inspirational lessons. And I understand you're not going to be able to deliver 100% lessons every single day, but let's aspire to that. That's what our students come here for. That's what our parents pay money for. They come here so that they can get the best education, so that they can move on their academic journeys and move on to university, the world of work, internships, etc. So, let's make sure that teaching and learning is at the best it can be. And of course, pastoral care. You may have seen on our website our building, and our building is a very circular building. There are no edges to it. And that circular building, for me, encapsulates everything about inclusivity, that we are inclusive, and that we are also the care that we provide, that 24/7 wraparound care. Being a boarding school extends beyond, school finishing at 5 o'clock. So that wraparound care for me is really, really important. And the non-negotiables, I suppose the most important one is service, is making sure that we deliver on what we say. The rhetoric has to meet the reality. We can all talk about this, that, and the other, and boarding school of the year and independent school of the year, but why are we that? What makes us that? And how do we deliver on that? And it's important that every single member of staff, governor, parent, student, our support staff are all part of that vision and are able to deliver. We still are on a journey, but it's a fun journey, and I'm enjoying it. So in terms of the journey then, Irfan, what's next? You've won these awards. You got the school up in lights and, fantastic. Yeah. So what's next for you and the school?
For us in the school, it's about ensuring that we, continue to provide outstanding teaching and learning and excellent pastoral care. I just don't want to sit back on our laurels and say, yeah, we've got this, we've done this now, we've reached the top. What do we do? What do people like Kenton Cool, who've climbed Everest, what do they then do? That's the highest peak. What do they go on to then do? they climb it again, but better, look at ways in which they can, get up there faster or get up there in a much more streamlined fashion. So for us, is to further improve our pastoral systems. It's looking at where we can further improve our boarding provision and looking at that urban boarding and develop our urban boarding culture. It's looking at the pastoral care and the well-being and making sure that maybe all of our staff and all of our parents are mental health first aid trained, so that our parents as well can provide that mental health support to their students who aren't boarders with us. So I think that's the next step now, engaging more of our parents, looking at how we further our pastoral care and looking at how we can continue to improve our results as a result of coaching, removing those barriers to learning and improving the well-being of our students and staff.
It's really interesting what you say there about the community and cementing that community and building on the community and getting parents involved. I mean, it's really interesting stuff. The other interesting thing you mentioned there is about Everest, because I didn't mention at the beginning, which I think is in your bio. You've been to Base Camp Everest, haven't you?
That's right. And I was very fortunate to take a group of students from Bedford School. We took about 50 odd students, along with a team from UCL, who were looking at how levels of oxygen were affected the teenage respiratory systems. And so they came along with that. So there was the academic part. The physical part was obviously getting up to Everest Base Camp, having to trek through various points in Nepal, and working alongside the other members of staff who came along with us and dealing with those situations. And I look at some of the situations we've been in, from COVID to some of the situations that come up in school, where they're here in previous institutions. And I always reflect back on how did we deal with that when we were at the top of a mountain, when colleagues and students were suffering from altitude sickness and this, that, and the other. How did we cope? How did we cover for each other? How did we build better relationships? How did we build a high performance team who could bring all of those kids? These were kids, remember, who were studying for GCSEs as soon as we got back, who were sitting GCSEs as soon as we got back, and A-levels. So we worked with GCSE Pod, for example, and we took a whole load of iPods up with us to Everest on our way there, and kids in between trekking would be studying. And we had teachers there as well who could support them with chemistry and economics and politics and this, that, and the other. And so that 3 weeks while we were out there, Everest, at Easter, at the same time as Hillary went up Everest, it was quite an eye-opener. And we did learn a lot about ourselves and about each other. And once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us.
I've been quite high. I've been in the Himalayas and I've been to India and various places, and I've never got real altitude sickness, but it can be quite a nasty thing, and it doesn't depend on. Well, it happen to anyone, can't it? People like you're uber fit that you wouldn't really think it would happen to, it can still strike them.
Very much so, and all our students, captains of hockey, captains of rugby, and played rugby and all those sort of sports. One or two of them suffered from altitude sickness, and it could hit the best of us. And so it's how we deal with that, how resilient are we? And that trip was certainly character developing for all of us.
So in terms of, you mentioned the next steps for the school, Irfan. So in terms of yourself, how do you develop yourself, and what are some of the next steps in your personal journey?
Well, I'm very much involved now, as you said, with the BSA and looking at inclusion and diversity, and the Black Lives Matter movement, which happened back in June, together with COVID, also produced challenges for us as a sector. And so it's representing inclusion and diversity on that respect. It's working with the ISC as a co-founder of the Inclusion and Diversity Group, and working with the various institutions such as the BSA, the GSA, HMC, and working at how we respond to that in a sustainable way. I'm also currently a governor at a school and looking at the safeguarding aspects and looking at the online safeguarding now that we are looking at the online remote teaching. And I'm also doing a master's as well in educational leadership. So, plenty to keep me occupied.
So how do you unwind?
I'm sorry?
How do you unwind?
I love spending time with the family, and that family time is really, really important. And has been over COVID. And while we were in lockdown, we learnt a lot about each other as well. And that was really, really important. And my wife, Jo, and our 2 girls and our dog, Rodney, it's been great for us in terms of lockdown. We've learnt about each other because, as a school leader, you're away most of the time and only get to see my children, maybe at the morning at breakfast and just before they go to bed. But the lockdown certainly gave us that time to spend with each other, and it's been really, really useful. So family time, spending time with them is how I unwind and listen to them and watching them grow. And I'm looking at a photograph of them here, and that's how I unwind. I also love reading. So I'm currently reading June Sarpong's Diversify as part of my role in the inclusion and diversity. And it has been looking at, Black and British David Olusoga, Natives by Akala, looking at and reading those books and being better informed. And I think in that respect, and as a school leader and someone who has that responsibility within the sector to look at inclusion and diversity, that is something I take, on board, and it's a great responsibility to have. And I suppose that is a way I unwind. I like working. Working gives me a purpose. My family give me purpose as well. But it is important to enjoy the finer things in life. So I enjoy listening to music. I enjoy watching films, those that have come out recently. It's a difficult time for us all, and we're looking at ways in which we can find little escapes from the normal day-to-day operational side of running a school and running a family and things like that.
And you can probably add listening to podcasts as well on that Irfan going forward, can't you?
Yeah, and I'm sure on Christmas Day I'll be downloading this podcast and listening to it while while we carve the turkey amongst the 4 of us in our house in London. So yes, that's I look forward to hearing it on Christmas Day.
It's really interesting what you say. I suppose it sounds a little bit like with the school, you're widening your reach and working with the community, and I suppose you as a school leader are widening your reach to work, across the sector, not just in your school, but having a wider impact as well. And you said finding that meaning and purpose. So, I suppose the school journey is mirroring a little bit of your own personal journey, it could be said.
Yeah, very much so. And, I think COVID as well, during lockdown, we were looking at ways in which we could further engage with the community. So, we were looking at meals for the kids who were in lockdown. We were looking at ways which we can support the NHS. We were right opposite St Thomas's and Evelina. So one of the ways in which we helped the NHS was when the NHS Nightingale Hospital was built. The campaign Rainbows for NHS began. And so the NHS Rainbow campaign had thousands and thousands of posters which were sent to them to be displayed up at the NHS Nightingale. Unfortunately, the NHS Nightingale could not take those pictures because of COVID-related issues. So we said, we'll take them. We've got a huge building. We've got loads and loads of windows there. The students weren't there because they were in lockdown. We had boarders. So the boarders took it upon themselves to put all of these posters, which were sent in their thousands from children and artists from around the world. And we pasted them up and down the 18 floors that we have here at DLD. There was a BBC report on us. There was, we were termed as a beacon of hope. When people walked past our building, they saw, the thanks to the NHS. And so that was one way in which we sort of supported and engaged with our community beyond the confines of the school gates.
Yes, wonderful stuff. So to bring this conversation to a close, Irfan, I ask all my guests the same question as a final cadence to the conversation, and that is, what piece of advice would you give yourself at the start of your career?
What piece of advice would I give myself? I probably would have said, don't worry about making mistakes, because we all learn from our mistakes. And as teachers, that's what we do. We learn, we're learning every day, and we want to impart that knowledge and experience to our students. And so by making mistakes, actually builds our character. Right at the beginning of my teaching career, I would have said, look, don't worry about making mistakes. It's how you bounce back from those mistakes, which will eventually inform you as a person, as an individual. And so, I'm happy to make mistakes, as I've done right here, agreeing to take part in this podcast.
You've mentioned that twice now, Irfan. Under duress, something.
I know. No, but it's been a wonderful experience, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. I wish each and every one of your listeners and people who engage in your podcast the very best going forward. Thank you very much.
That's great, Irfan. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and I hope you continue to soar in all that you do. So many thanks.
That's very kind of you, Nick. Thank you very much.
If you are interested in working with Persyou through our coaching and leadership development packages, or would like to connect to discuss any of the topics on the show, please send me an email at hello@persyou.com or visit our website, persyou.com. You can also follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter at Nicholas McKie or Persyou. If you enjoy the show, please leave a rating and spread the word. We are proud to be developing a truly global community and audience. Take care and look forward to speaking to you again soon.